Good afternoon. I'm Brad Spirison, publisher of Grown In. Thank you for joining us for a fast 45-minute roundtable with Illinois dispensary owners. During this conversation, which is sponsored by the Cannabis Business Association of Illinois, we will address the significant challenges and promising opportunities these retailers are confronting in summer 2020. Before we introduce our three guests, a few quick facts about the current retail cannabis landscape in Illinois. There are currently 63 dispensaries operating in the state today, with an additional 47 that are licensed but have not yet opened. Additionally, 75 more dispensary licenses are expected to be extended to social equity applicants sometime later this year. Dispensaries in Illinois serve two distinct client bases: medical customers and, as of January 1st, recreational consumers. Interestingly, the number of medical card holders continues to rise sharply a half year into legalization. Why? Medical customers, a status which most of us can obtain and many dispensaries will help you attain, pay significantly lower tax rates and have more reliable access to tight supply. We will discuss different methods for serving medical and recreational customers with our panel in a moment. Speaking of tight supply, only 3 of the 21 companies licensed to cultivate marijuana in Illinois today account for the majority of product that ultimately hits the shelves. Cannabis cultivation is capital intensive, and at least to this point, few companies with the license to grow are currently able to pony up the necessary cash to do it. While not being able to keep up with demand is a nice problem to have, it's a problem nevertheless. Factor in COVID restrictions and requirements to keep enough supply available for medical consumers, and there are real headaches, if not existential issues, to deal with. We will learn how these operators are figuring out how to make do while their most popular products aren't always available on the shelves. Beyond managing supply and demand, these entrepreneurs and executives of state-sanctioned but still federally illegal enterprises face unique operational challenges. For starters, most of the payments are in cash. Managing and transporting money is fraught with risk and concerns. Most federal banks won't work with cannabis companies for fear of risking their national charter. While some state banks are in play, this is not a service they advertise given the compliance risk and logistical challenges. Dispensary owners and plant-touching companies at large also have specific challenges in the areas of security, community relations, and employee training. Now a little bit more about each of our panelists here today. NewMed, which is changing its name to New Era, has dispensaries in Urbana, East Peoria, and Chicago. The company has its own access to supply, having purchased the Hillcrest cultivation site from PharmaCann through a complicated deal with MedMen. Principal Officer Keith McGinnis will share more about the company's history. Christine Wildrick, co-owner of Herbal Remedies in Quincy since 2016, is a vocal proponent for independent dispensary owners. She operates one dispensary currently and is waiting on more reliable access to supply before opening a second location. Gorgi Naumovski, operator of Thrive dispensaries in far downstate Anna and Harrisburg, recently sold a controlling portion of the dispensaries to Newton, Massachusetts-based MariMed. Gorgi continues to operate the 2 dispensaries he started back in 2016.
Thank you. We're so glad that everyone is joining us. Christine and Gorgi, I see you, and Keith, I believe, will be joining us from remote. Thank you all for joining us today in this Grown In webinar. And to start the conversation, I think we should look at some of the news of the day. Retail reports for June indicate that cannabis sales on the recreational side rose another $3 million, and we're now at 46.5 million or so on the rec side. Christine, starting with you, with that, how's business?
Business is continuing to grow. We are seeing, as you mentioned earlier, we're seeing more new medical patients. As the supply for our adult use dispensary becomes more available, we are seeing more adult consumers making purchases at the adult dispensary. So it's continuing to grow. However, with the supply, we're still limited on what we can make available to both our medical patients and our adult purchasers.
And Keith joining us from the phone. You recently established your own cultivation presence with a facility in Hillcrest. How is business, and to what degree are you impacted by supply at this point?
Well, we took over the cultivation first part of May, and getting our hands around that, what we can produce out of there, and continually making improvements with the cultivation center itself by adding a number of different tools that are going to help produce more cannabis. In the adult use and the medical side of things from a dispensary level, we're continuing every month to improve. And like Chris had mentioned, we too are taking on a lot more medical patients, which is it's a very good sign in terms that people are becoming more out on this, and they're seeing us more open to both, not only the medical, but also on the adult use side of things. So from a supply standpoint, we experience the same problems as everyone else has, in terms of we were an independent for so long and not having all the flower available, which was the demand not only on the medical side, but on the adult use as well. Gradually, a lot of it because we have our own product now, we're putting it out, but we're also, we're very open to sharing with the independent dispensaries out there as well. As Chris mentioned, we made a delivery. She didn't mention this, but we have made a delivery to their dispensaries in Quincy, and we're 4 hours away. We've actually focused on some of the independent dispensaries, knowing that they're in need of flower as well.
Wonderful. And Gorgi, you have an interesting position in that you had operated two dispensaries in downstate Illinois, and those were acquired. You're still the general manager. So talk about, in general, how business is, and then we can get to the supply issue for you as well.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Business has been great. I guess we can't complain from where we came from or where we're at today, but we still have all the same struggles as far as making sure we have enough inventory for the medical and recreational consumers. So obviously we went from a startup, and it's nice to see the adult use customers come in, but it's a constant daily struggle trying to maintain that inventory.
So we did see the rise of the medical numbers, as we indicated as well. Operationally, these are two distinct lines of businesses with two different regulatory states, two different tax structures. As business owners, operators, executives, talk about the challenges and opportunities of catering to those unique communities. Keith, let's start with you on that.
Rephrase that for me, will you, Mike? I didn't catch that.
Yeah,
Middle part.
So it sounds like because of the supply issue, and because we're seeing a corresponding rise in medical licenses, supply, pricing, et cetera. As a business owner, operator, talk about running a startup company with these two distinct customer lines, basically. You're catering to two different types of customers. So how operationally do you go about doing that for your three locations?
Well, from an operational standpoint, as required by state of Illinois, we must make sure that our medical patients are taken care of first. That's the way the rules are stated. We are getting less than, we're allowed to have 40% of our own product in each one of our dispensaries. We're not putting that much in there yet. We are spreading it out a little bit to, like I mentioned earlier, independent dispensaries. But we've also had decent relationship with the other cultivators that are vertically integrated, of being able to get product. I know it's the same story everywhere. Flower is the demand right now, but as far as other products, we've been okay. But our main thing is to make sure that we have the medical taken care of first, and hopefully there's going to be an influx of flower coming out from a number of different cultivators that they're willing to share. We are willing to share.
And Christine, I know that you are delaying the opening of a second location because you want to make sure that there is proper supply. Under what conditions could you open that second, what degree of confidence will you have in product availability to open that second location?
What degree of confidence?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I know that we're not there yet. We are, as I mentioned earlier, we are seeing some larger deliveries coming from some of the cultivators. We have, at our dual site, like I mentioned, we have not saturated that market. We're still growing. I'm not really sure how to answer that question. We still need to see an increased supply at our existing dual site. And I'm hoping by later this summer, we can open up our second site and have assurance from the cultivators that they'll be able to meet our supply demand for that location. It is concerning that we have 63 dispensaries operating today. As more and more second site licenses get awarded, those new licenses are going to demand the same thing I'm demanding. So it's going to be a wait and see for me.
Gorgi, are you experiencing similar issues?
Yeah, we're on the same line here. We're delaying our secondary sites for hopefully an August opening to make sure that our other sites will have enough inventory. And what is that number? I don't know. There's no right or wrong answer. We're just trying to work with our relationships and the growers in their capacity today and try to secure for our opening, but also looking for the reoccurring deliveries to come in. So it's nice to have an initial order to be up and running, but nothing worse than opening and closing your business because you don't have product. And it's out of our hands. We try to manage it as best as possible, but sometimes the consumer doesn't understand. They think we at the dispensary are holding back and not wanting to sell to them, which is not the case.
Well, how active are each of you in converting your recreational customers to medical customers? Here in Chicago, a quick Google search will show, through to dispensaries, will show someone like me how to make that conversion. Is this something that all of you are proactively doing, or?
Well, we're talking about medical or recreational customers converting to medical. With the high taxes, and if you have a qualifying condition, my recommendation is always for you to convert to a medical patient because you'll save in the long run.
And Christine or Keith, with having a number of medical customers available, how does that help you at least plan and predict your own operations when you know you have this set customer base that you have to prepare for?
So we continue, at least we continue to, ensuring that we have adequate supply for our medical patients. We're continuing to restrict and limit what we make available to the adult purchasers. So it's a continuing balancing act, because our medical patients continue to grow. And you asked the question, what are we doing? I agree with Georgie's comments that what we do here, if we have a lot of individuals coming in into the adult dispensary, and as they are asking our techs questions, we find out that they actually do have a qualifying condition. They try cannabis a few times, and if they get that therapeutic effect that they're looking for, we do encourage them to enroll in the medical program for a couple of reasons. One, it's a significant tax savings, and there is a much better product selection available to them.
Keith, you operate 3 dispensaries in Illinois. What advice would you have for a newer dispensary owner in terms of trying to identify a bank that first will do business with them, and then second, what attributes you are looking for in that bank?
Well, I don't know if I'd be looking for any attributes in any bank if they're willing to take you. There just aren't enough out there right now to that are taking on many new customers. We've been fortunate. We've actually have access to 2 different banks, and apparently we're doing what they want out of us, and they are accommodating what we need done as well. So, anybody coming into it, it's you better have a bank. We experienced the not so fortunate side of things in this past looting that was going on in the city of Chicago, where our dispensary was broken into, and we were hit pretty heavy. We no longer keep anything. We no longer keep anything in the dispensary in terms of cash. So we've made different ways of doing it.
Similar on the banking front, Gorgi and Christine, beggars can't be choosers at this point?
Yeah, for Mike, go ahead, Chris.
For us, we've been fortunate from the very beginning to have a bank that will take our cannabis account. We went through a short period of time where we were having to pay our cultivators, some cultivators by cash because they had lost their bank. And that makes for a very unsafe situation when you've got transporters carrying large sums of cash. Banking is definitely an area that needs to be seriously looked at. Merchant processing, it would be great if banks would allow us to offer our patients and purchasers debit and credit card options through a reputable banking institution.
Well, let's keep on that point in terms of receiving payments. Gorgi, how much of an issue is this for you? And what type of workarounds would you like to see in terms of payments beyond cash?
We do accept payments, other alternative payments now, but they run through a debit card system or a wallet type of processing. It's not as clear cut as a credit card transaction at a normal retail operation. This is what I always say. Our business is unique. Normal business, you don't really think about the cash or the transaction. You might think of it 1% of the time, but in this cannabis world, I feel like I'm thinking about it 20% of the time. Counting the money, redepositing, repaying. I spend so much time handling cash in the organization. So it would be nice to have traditional banking functions and features and merchant accounts out there. So that will alleviate a lot of the potential for security risks that Keith has experienced and myself in the past. So it's a constant struggle dealing with cash and transactions.
Keith, how much are the payment situation keeping you up at night?
Well, since day one, going back 4 years, let's take 356 times 4. That's about how often you stay awake and you worry about the payment issue of it. We're all for card processing side of things once it's a bank's going to allow it to be implemented. I know there's a few out there that have accepted it at this point, but we're looking to go that way. Now, from the cultivation standpoint, we're comfortable being paid with a check from a dispensary on a delivery. And, not having to handle cash is a great thing.
Banking is not the only unique attribute specific to the cannabis industry. In terms of tax season, the extended tax season is coming up for a lot of consumers, and the tax deduction question. And Christine, we talked a little bit about this earlier in terms of the 280E proposed law that will allow cannabis owners to deduct business expenses. Can you explain how challenging the current environment is for you? And then I'd like the others. And, maybe some common sense advice that you'd like to dispense to lawmakers about why it's important to this emerging industry.
Yeah, 280E. If I could speak to the legislators and get their ear, we are here in Illinois and in many other states where the cannabis industry is regulated. We are so highly regulated. We are a legitimate business, and we should be able to operate and deduct our normal business expenses just like any other business operation. It's definitely something that needs to be fixed. It's not sure what else to say on that topic.
Right. So maybe as for Gorgi and Keith with 2 and 3 existing operating dispensaries, how much does that issue curtail the issue of not being able to deduct business expenses, and 280E being a law to help proposed law to help cannabis operators do so? How much does that restrict growth, and what message might you have to say to legislators as well?
I look at it from the way of how commerce should work. We're helping one another if some of the correct things come through. And as Chris mentioned, on the 280E, something needs to be done with the 280E side of it. I'm sure at the federal level, they don't care how they get their taxes, but I'm sure at the federal level, they'd probably sure like to know that it's coming from a safe side of things. Promote the safety side of the whole thing to make the program work just like any other do, whether it's in the gaming side of it, where there's tons of cash being handled. However they do it, they can make it safe for not only the consumer, but also for the other side of it as well.
Yeah, from my standpoint, I don't know how many people on this webinar really know what the 280E is. It was implemented by the IRS for illegal activity so they can tax at a higher tax rate, which is the only thing you can deduct under the 280E rule is your cost of goods. So, this business is not for the faint of heart, which a lot of people think, you're in the cannabis space, you're making so much money, but whatever's left at the end of the day, the IRS takes, and you can't reinvest back in your business. So it really does handcuff you in the long term. We're regulated, licensed facilities that get taxed like criminals. So it does have to change.
So we do have a fair amount of applicants watching this and following. As we know, the 75 social equity dispensaries should be announced later this year. However, that's more of a starting line than it is a finishing line. Starting with Christine, maybe talk about, once you get the license, what are the things that you as an operator need to pay attention to in far as maintaining that license and being in full compliance with the state?
Sure. As we say here at the dispensary, it's one thing to get your license. It's a whole different ballgame to maintain that license. Every year we have had to apply for our license renewal. So just because we are licensed for 1 year doesn't mean we're going to be relicensed for the second year. But throughout all of our existence, we've had to ensure compliance with with the regulations, with the law. You know, we are subject to random unannounced inspections by Illinois State Police, by the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulations. They have access to our security system. They can be watching our day-to-day operations, and if there's something they don't like, they can, you know, pick up the phone and have a conversation with us about that. Every time they come for an inspection, you know, they come with a checklist, and they want to make sure that you're doing this, this, and this, and this per regulations. And we have, in our experience here at Herbal Remedies, when we go through that annual license renewal from one year to the next, it seems like the state is asking for a little bit more information, or a modification here, or a change here or there. So it's something to be mindful of, that what you know today and the way you operate today is likely to have to change sometime in the future.
Gorgi, from a licensure perspective or anything else, what advice do you have for those fortunate enough to potentially get awarded a dispensary later in 2020 in Illinois?
Yeah, you know, for me, you know, when you put your standing operating procedures in place, they're very important. You know, as you hire your staff and have them trained, you know, they could put your license at risk. So, you know, like I always say, I don't run a drop-in center to my employees. You know, we're a highly regulated industry and a business, and I intend to keep our license intact. So it stems from daily inventories, to keeping track, you know, when the products are coming in and out at the cash register or in the back of the house. You know, I got to say that we've not lost one product through this whole process. Everything's been accounted for. But, you know, it comes down to training, and following your SOPs that you've laid out. And, you know, everything Christina said is accurate. They keep asking for more, and you got to keep updating your SOPs, and you never know when they're going to show up.
Keith, and you not only for the dispensaries, but maybe for some of these craft grow licensees, now that you have more of a hand in the cultivation side, what advice do you have?
Every day, tell them you need to improve every single day that you walk in the door. Because you have to remember, we dispensary owners and cultivation owners and the IDFPR and the Department of Agriculture, it was new to everybody at the same time. So if we continue to look out for one another, I've always been involved in heavily regulated businesses, and I'm not opposed to it at all. I think we make both sides get better every single day. And, you know, the inspections, they come in randomly, and they'll come in with the IDFPR on the dispensary side, or state police, or state inspector on the cultivation. Be prepared, because it can happen when you're, you know, you're caught when something's not working correctly for you, and they'll point it out, and there's a chance there'll be a citation to it. So therefore, your standard operating procedures better be on target every single day. And if you make a change, make sure you let them know you made a change.
All right. So I understand we have some questions from the audience. Phoebe Dupree has a question for the panel. Hello, Phoebe.
Hi. I was hoping you could just speak to payable days, if there are any. I'm on the craft grow side, and in my mind, we'll grow flower and we'll sell it. A transporter will pick it up and bring it to a dispensary, and we'll be paid. I'm wondering if that's how it works, or if there's a different arrangement and I should anticipate some payable days in there.
I guess I can jump in. Most cultivators have provided some sort of credit, so I would account for some sort of credit. You know, it's hard to pay on delivery when, you know, maybe some product's going to go back. It was labeled incorrectly on your end, and there's a lot of factors. So, really, there should be some credit terms, and it would be up to you how you want to do it. If it's COD, you could possibly handcuff yourself and maybe not get some of those orders if it's that stringent.
Any other comments for Phoebe? We have a question from Ryan Coffey.
Hey guys, appreciate the info. I'm curious to hear more about the payment constraints that you guys mentioned earlier, obviously being so cash reliant. I'm just curious like what the total impact of that is to your business. And also if you guys have tried any alternative payment methods like Can Pay or Arrow Pay and what your experience with those were.
This is Keith. We're currently looking at different sources that we can do. Can Pay, Arrow. There's a third one in the state of Illinois, I believe, that we're currently talking to see if we're going to take that on or not. Irregardless, there's always going to be an amount of cash that's going to exchange. I mean, you're going to do both. So the security of that cash needs to be addressed every single day at the end of business.
Excellent. And one final thing from the numbers that came out today, 12 million of the 47 and change in recreational sales was from tourists outside of the state of Illinois. How maybe starting again with Christine, because you're at Quincy, close to the border. How do you accommodate and how do you market? How do you generate this user base and cater to these folks that obviously are looking forward to hopping the river and coming to your store?
Well, we utilize social media to let people know where we are, type of products that we have available. We've offered online ordering so that they can place their order in advance. If somebody's traveling 2, 3, 4 hours to get here, which we've had, that's not uncommon. That's been helpful on the adult market anyway.
Gorgi and Keith, anything to share about marketing, particularly to tourists from out of state?
I can jump in. Anna and Harrisburg, we border Indiana. We got Kentucky and Tennessee people coming in, and Missouri. So we have an aggressive social media campaign, and it comes down to them finding where you're located. They travel from far away, and then it's all about customer service at the end of the day. So when they come into your door, you want to make sure that you've taken care of them, and you can't always give them what you want because we're always limited on flour, but we give them something for them being loyal customers to us. So social media, and then regular good old customer service when they get there.
And Keith, the New Med store is just adjacent to the Wicker Park area in Chicago. Talk maybe about recruiting that demographic in particular, as well as tourists coming and staying in that region. What are you doing to attract those consumers?
Well, at the Chicago store, we're fortunate of the population up there that they're going to find you in a lot of ways. But one of the things that we do have at the Chicago store that attracts more is we do have parking, which is uncommon in the city for someone to park, and we're right off the 9094, like 2 blocks. So we do have some advertising up on different buildings that lets the person recognize driving by what it is. In Urbana, we're not too far from Indiana border. When we first opened up in January with the adult use, we probably had a very good number of people come across, and it's all about the customer service. As more come online, there's going to be other places to stop. So make sure you get them. Once you have a customer once, there's a reason for them to come back to you the second time.
That's the name of the game in cannabis and any other industry. Christine, Gorgi, Keith, we really appreciate the time and insight that you're sharing with us and the Grown In community. And we look forward to having you again very, very soon. Thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.